Thank you, Ken. Yeah, I'm afraid I have a horrible handicap. I have a really, really hard time believing what someone insists is true if they come to me with no data. And the world is full of people very long on moral authority and kind of short on data, telling you what to do, especially in the green space. So my husband and I embarked on building a house, and along the way I encountered a green article on what were the best countertop materials to choose, which just pretty much sent me off the deep end, because there was all these kind of mealy-mouthed, relativistic, this is better than that, this one has less water consumption, not a single number. I got to the end of this article and I said, this has given me no new information. And I'm the kind of person that wonders things like this. I have spilled a blob of organic, sustainably farmed, local yogurt from happy self-actualized cows on my countertop, which in this case is granite. And I wonder, can I reach for a paper towel and wipe it up? Or will the green police come and get me? Is this something that's even, is this okay to even contemplate? A lot of people will tell you no, a lot of people will tell you yes, and none of them will have any numbers. I went and found the numbers. So if I have my virgin paper towel, I can look at it in terms of how much energy it took to produce that paper towel and how much water it took to produce that paper towel. So every time I grab that paper towel off the little roll and use it and wad it up and throw it away, I have used up this much energy, 84 watt hours and 0.13 gallons. So if I grab my cotton towel, very little embodied energy in the form of energy, but there is still quite a bit of embodied water. I don't leave a yogurty towel lying around on my countertop. I tend to wash them after I've wiped something up with it. And if I throw that in the standard washing machine, along with all the rest of the clothes to make it up, this is that towel's share of the hot water energy and the water that got used to wash that towel. So now that paper towel's looking a little bit better. Except I have a high efficiency front loading washing machine. And it uses a lot less water, and therefore a lot less energy in that water and a lot less of the water in there. So now it's looking better than the virgin paper towel, except I also use recycled post-consumer waste paper towels. So if I look at that, and now I go back into what's the energy associated with the reprocessing of this and the water associated with the reprocessing of that paper into a paper towel, the energy's looking better and the water's looking a little bit worse. So I say, screw the towel, I'm gonna go with a sponge. And I'm going to rinse it off in cold water. And so now, just that little bit of water being rinsed, the water is looking worse than both the recycled paper towel and the virgin paper towel, on par with washing, and the energy's looking better. So sponges are looking like a pretty good way to go. Unless you're sometimes like me and you'll notice that that handle is in the cold position. But what if you left it in the hot position from the last time? And you just run it long enough that you fill the pipes with warm water, not to the point where it gets to this, but you just left it in the wrong position. So now suddenly the energy has gone up. What if you wait till it runs hot? This is how long it takes for the hot water to get to my tap down in my kitchen. Like any good experimentalist, I put a bucket there and I turned it on and I waited until it got hot and I saw how much water I had. My point on this is you can be optimizing the wrong thing very, very easily. You can get so wrapped up in, is it a virgin paper towel or a recycled paper towel, or how much am I washing it, and lose track of the fact that if the handle's in the wrong position or you like warm water to wash it out, it can completely wipe out all of these things that you were trying to optimize. So imagine someone who gets this wrapped up around paper towels building a house, and trying to make the 1,015 decisions that are necessary to make each and every day while you are trying to decide on materials and everything along the house. And so my husband and I have been doing this, as I mentioned. And when we looked into this, with typical construction, a typical single-family home takes about 300 megawatt hours of embodied energy. This is that same energy that goes into the manufacturing of all of the components that go into the house, similar to that embodied energy of the paper towel. But this is like millions and millions of paper towels. And so we were wondering, if we were paying attention to this, if we understood what was going into the materials, could we do any better? So we're building in Silicon Valley, have built in Silicon Valley. I love the past tense. And we started with, as often you do, with a lot that already had a house on it. This is 1948 construction, held together by termites holding hands. We really didn't feel that worried about tearing it down. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to compare the energy associated with a typical construction along the top, and then the choices that we made in our low embodied energy construction. So the first thing you do is you got to get rid of that house. And so you demolish it, and you go and you dump it in a landfill, and that takes about 1.2 megawatt hours of energy. Same for typical construction. We deconstructed the house. We took it apart piece by piece, salvaged the materials that could be salvaged, and while 20 megawatt hours or 21 megawatt hours of salvageable wood, copper, aluminum, some tile, bricks, while those are drop in the bucket compared to the overall construction of the house, we diverted about 2/3 of the volume out of the landfill and was able to get many usable materials out of it that went into the house. Then we did something that's not so good on an embodied energy point of view. We put a rainwater catchment tank in. This is a 9,000 gallon rainwater catchment tank, which we are taking the whole yard water independent. So our only water coming in from the municipality will be from our drinking water. Makes absolutely no financial sense. It holds about $36 worth of water with today's subsidized water rates, but it was something that we thought was important and was part of the dynamic of our yard. Then we build a foundation. This is a passive solar house, and so with typical construction, this Noah's Ark worth of cement that we have, or concrete that we have underneath the house, so that should we ever get a liquefying earthquake, it will just kind of float along on the top. You can really reduce the embodied energy by including 25% fly ash. This is a byproduct of coal burning, and it actually improves the characteristics of the concrete quite a bit, and displaces a lot of the Portland cement that goes into concrete, and so therefore really reduces the embodied energy. Not terribly sexy, but quite effective. Framing and roofing, we chose wood. Steel is very, very high embodied energy, and there are other materials which are available, but for the kind of construction that we were doing, we felt that wood framing was a reasonable way to go. But then we got to the next surprising thing, where I was looking at doors and windows. If we'd gone with an aluminum frame windows, we'd be looking at over 1/3 of, or doubling the embodied energy of the house in the process of putting those windows in. Now, if we went to vinyl windows, the embodied energy comes down, but the wood that we chose is considerably less. Now, from a maintenance point of view, in retrospect, I would probably put vinyl cladding on the outside of those windows, which would give me a marginal bump in embodied energy. But the key thing is that the wood was minimally processed, and that is what adds all of that energy in. So in plumbing, electrical, and HVAC, we put as many passive systems in as we could, which are really going to affect the operating energy. We have a heat recovery ventilation system. There's heat recovery out of the shower water. There's lots of air-to-air and air-to-water heat exchangers. There's about 7 different kinds of heat exchangers in our house, all to make the house as much passively thermally balanced as possible, with us only tweaking it around the edges. But it's hard to do much in the embodied energy on that. Insulation, however, is an area where you can make a really big difference. What you see on the left is isocyanates or polystyrene foam being blown in, and it's beautiful insulation. It seals up all the cracks. It's very, very high performance, and it's very, very high R value on the insulation. But it is also very high energy production going into making this synthetic insulation. The insulation that you see on the right is recycled cellulose newspaper. In fact, my walls have lots of little bits of printing in them. It also gets sprayed in and seals up all of the cracks almost as well as the spray-in foam, and is a lower performance insulation, but still it is much, much lower in its embodied energy. Drywall is actually a surprisingly large, but not terribly often talked about, component of the energy that gets put into a house. And there's a company just down the street from where we're building that has made a new drywall, which is 1/5 of the embodied energy of classical drywall and behaves just the same. So we've got that in the house. Flooring. Another area that people talk about sustainability, but they don't talk about energy. And if you put carpeting down, you're going to put about 1/10 of the embodied energy of typical construction in that. And you probably are going to replace it every, well, if you've got kids, you're going to replace it about every 4 years. If you have other more responsible, non-spilling people, perhaps you'll keep it all around for 10 years. But still, that's a pretty major reinvestment of energy. If you put in wood or concrete, as we're doing, we have a stained concrete downstairs and reclaimed wood upstairs, the energy embodied in that is very low. Then the exterior finishes, we didn't find that there was a whole lot that we could do, but when we added it all up, insulation, low fly ash, a better drywall, flooring choices, these are the non-sexy choices that we made that you don't see in any of these green articles that made a difference between building a house with half of the embodied energy and the standard. So now what does it really mean? Well, who cares? How much energy is that compared to anything else that I do during the day? So my new house versus the old house starts out with a 151 megawatt hour deficit. I've dug an energy hole that I have to climb back out of. The old house was a lot less efficient, but it started already being built. So if I run it forward, the energy consumption on the top, the water consumption on the bottom, my old house to my new house, I break even in 2016. Though that's a little bit misleading, because I probably would have remodeled the old house if I was going to stay in it. I would have put more efficient appliances. I would have insulated the walls. I would have put in my front-loading washing machine. Even so, I would have broken even in 2030 with as good as I could imagine remodel of the old house. If I hadn't, however, paid attention to the embodied energy, I would have started with a 300 megawatt hour hole that I was trying to dig myself out of. And if I compared that to the old house that I had upgraded, I wouldn't be breaking even for about 50 years. And so compared to the old house undone, I'm breaking even in 5 years. Compared to an upgraded old house, I'm breaking even in 20 years. And compared to it, if I had not built paying attention to embodied energy, it would be a good 50 years before I would dig myself back out of that hole and before what I had done was energy neutral. And all that time, had I not done the calculation, I probably would have been patting myself on the back about what a great thing I had done for the environment by building my wonderful green house. All the time, I still hadn't paid it back. So my main message is figure it out for yourself, because there aren't going to be any articles that spell this out for you. The numbers aren't that hard to find, and you can run your own numbers. And so, be a geek. All my calculations are on my blog if you want to look at them.